and it's sometimes your work can just overwhelm you without you noticing it until
Yeah.
one day everything you feel that you are so clear about just becomes unclear. So that really shook me.
Hello, I'm Sam.
And I'm Amelia.
Welcome back to Ask the Drawer podcast where we aim to build a better mindset for better relationships.
Yeah, this week on Better Mindset, we are talking and discussing through the differences between work-life balance and work-life fulfillment. We always hear, and a lot of us always talk about work-life balance and how to find work-life balance, but we had a really interesting conversation with this guy that we met from Hong Kong, and he brought up the concept of work-life fulfillment.
Yeah, on work-life fulfillment, it's one of those never-ending questions that lead on to work-life balance, which is actually a pretty big topic. But we've brought on Ray, who has an interesting perspective when it comes to work-life fulfillment. Welcome, Ray.
Welcome.
Oh, thanks, Emily. Thanks, Sam, for the honorable mention, right? Like work-life fulfillment, work-life balance. I think it's such a big topic. I'm still learning. We're all still learning. We're going through this transitioning from the young adult phase, becoming like a mature adult, right? It's always, so happy to be part of the podcast and deep diving into different aspects. Looking forward for the banters and all. Yeah.
Us too. Thank you so much for coming on. So before we get started, let's just get our listeners to understand like who you are, what you do, and all the things that you do.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to keep it brief, right? And then throughout the different questions, I think we can dive into different personas or perspective, right? So, hi everyone, my name is Ray, born and raised in Malaysia, and hence you can still hear a ring of Malaysian accent, right? But I went to Singapore for high school, spent 2 years there, did the international baccalaureate, and not to say Singapore was very boring. I just felt like everyone was super hardworking, and I was like, okay, I needed a new change, right? So that has led me to apply more broadly out of Singapore, right? So I applied for universities in the UK, in Singapore, obviously, and in Hong Kong, right? But long story short, I think I got my ticket to Hong Kong. I think HKUSD was very generous to give me a full tuition scholarship. So I was like, okay, I'm going to save parents money, and then went to Hong Kong, right? And eventually had a really great time at university. Yes, it was like University of Stress and Tension, HKUST. But we went through it, and I felt like I learned a lot, and I really enjoyed being in Hong Kong. It's a very meritocracy place where you work hard, you get the stuff that you want. And I landed a job in Hong Kong in technology. And that's how I sort of stayed in Hong Kong, went through different phases in roles within the technology space, and COVID hit and all, and we all went through that phase, and it's like, do we work hard? Do we find work-life balance? And I think work-life fulfillment is like a big topic that I'm discovering myself, right? So yeah, hopefully that sets the stage and give context about the kind of person I am, the backgrounds that I came from, and which industry.
Yeah, and also living in Hong Kong as well and working there, I'm sure a lot of people know that Hong Kong is a lot of hustle culture, so finding work-life balance in there is a whole thing in itself. But before we start, wanted to explore and throw out to all of us, what is work-life balance for each of us? We'll start with you, Ray.
Oh, putting me on the spot. So I've never really thought about it, and I looked up things whether there's official definitions, right? So maybe so that we can align, right? Like I will share a definition that I thought like it's really. I just did a quick Google search, right? And then one of the results was like, okay, work-life balance is about creating firm boundaries between your work time and non-work time, right? And when I look at that, I was like, wow, that's actually as simple as it is, really work-life balance, right? Because when I used to think about work-life balance, and I still think about it that way, it's like, well, when you're working, and then when you're off work, you really don't need to work. You can do and enjoy, have a life outside of work. Yeah, so I feel, and I still believe that is quite an accurate definition of work-life balance, right? So you don't have to bring work back home.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think that's how I would go about thinking about work life and then balance.
Well, my perspective of work-life balance, and this is something I always struggle with, so that we all know, I work from home. I work in the finance industry. So the hard part is you do 8 hours in finance at home, the separation between your personal life and then the work life. Because you're working in the same environment, working from home, that's the difficult thing that I find is switching off or setting that boundary where, like you said, Ray, that firm boundary between this is work and then this is your own life. You got to switch off. So having technology like your mobile phone and things like that, it's very hard to not look at things that are work related. And I'm guilty of that all the time because I have work emails on my phone and I have a text, like a chat thing that we have for work. So a lot of these, we have deals that are going on that is quite important. It's very hard for me to tell myself to switch off, even though, yes, if I have set firm boundaries, it's hard for me to really get to that point.
So how would you define balance for you then? Like in a perfect world, what is work-life balance to you?
Yeah. So balance for me is pretty much just making sure that I switch off, making sure that, okay, these are the set firm times that are work and then set firm times that are more personal life.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I have a very different approach. Like I understand that work-life balance is that boundary, like work is work, and then you have your own off times. But balance is also very subjective, right? Because everyone's ideal world of work-life balance is so different. And why it's different for me is because at the moment I'm doing freelance, which means like time is very different from like a 9 to 5. But I'm just speaking from when I did do a 9 to 5, I did freelance, I did this podcasting, I have my social media for my design, like IG and all that.
Yeah.
I have to put a lot more time than just a regular 9 to 5, which is why when you spoke to us about the work-life fulfillment, that really hit a string. And I was like, hey, that's a really interesting concept that I never thought of because everyone's talking about work-life balance and like reducing hours and just doing the work then going out and rest. So that really got me thinking, and work-life balance in this sense is really enjoying what you do and then also being mindful of how you're feeling at the time. So like, are you tired? Are you stressed out? Are you overworked? If you're not, you've got the energy to keep going, then keep going. But if you notice that you're tired, then truly take a rest and don't just keep power on. So that's how I see work-life balance, is really more regulating how you're feeling at the time and moving with your body in a way.
All very valid points. Honestly, such a simple concept, right? Work-life balance, but at the end, it's all about perspective, right? And coming to the table. And I like that thing, right? And if I were to pick on, just make quick comments, I think like what Sam have shared, it's a perfect example. Yes, work-life balance, but in today's day and age where a lot of things can be distracting when you're outside office hours, right? So I think a lot of people now have this concept of a blended approach. So meaning like, that's why, there's not many people talk about work-life balance already. If they do talk about work-life balance, it's more like how you integrate your work into your life.
Yeah.
Especially for those works that, have messaging apps and then WhatsApp group to run deals and all. I think especially for sales, right? Because Sam use sales, right? Sales can be quite, demanding during closing times. And so it becomes a integration into your life at certain periods, right? Sometimes, it's more than others. So I think companies, or if you're a manager, just having a culture of, making sure you give sufficient leeway, right? Or building a culture that, hey, work is work, after work is, chill time and not, right? So I just wanted to point that out. But I think both of you, both Sam and Amelia, right, actually are good because Sam, you work in a firm, actually arguably myself, right, we're striving for work-life balance and how to integrate it and how we can eventually become fulfillment. But Amelia on the other side is like freelance, meaning like you're always just gonna like spend time on things that you really are passionate about. So that's really, you're there and you're trying to find balance about driving stuff that you really want to drive, that fulfills you, that works towards your passion, but then how you find balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? So it's
Yeah.
like now we're already doing something and then we're finding a balance at work. But then, yeah, on the other side, it's like, hey, you already find something that's fulfilling for you. And then how you make it work throughout different aspects of your life. So very interesting.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's why I love these discussions,
Yeah.
because everyone has such different perspectives and that everyone has their own answer, and it's just beautiful to hear all the different sides. So you did mention that you didn't ever really consider work-life balance or looked into the definition before, but did you ever consider the thought of work-life balance and what that is and how to apply that to yourself?
Yeah. So obviously that has evolved over time, right? Yeah. Work-life balance, even before we start working, when we go to university, right? The balance of like work hard, play hard, or like work hard, play harder, right? Very rare, very
Yeah.
rare. But I mean, us being Asians, very rare because at the end, like, oh, the work, you have to put in the work first, and then you can feel, oh, I deserve to play, right? So I think through that process, like at least for me, forms a thought that yeah, we all deserve to have fun. And if I find a job, I want something that's comfortable, gets highest pay, good culture. Honestly, very unrealistic, right? Being a fresh grad. Yeah. But that notion of like, oh yeah, I gotta get a job that is not too chur, not too so chur, it's just basically not too tough, not too harsh, the environment. But at the same time, you can ride the progression ladder and all, right? And being a fresh grad was like, oh, that's time where I earn income, right? So you want to explore the world and everything, right? So that's where the balance come into, right? Fulfilling your different experiences outside of your work.
Mm.
But I guess that has evolved over time. Yeah. And I think I can share some ideas on that. Like, so for example, maybe after 2 to 3 years of work experience, right? Then you try to be in companies, you start thinking like, oh, you actually want growth, career progression, right? You just don't want to be stagnant. And then the concept of balance slowly diminishes because you're prioritizing growth.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're approaching more to integrating and how to be setting goals, do more self-development, listen to podcasts, seeing how other successful seniors have done. And then you're like, okay, you're in the growth mode and then you're like all in. I'm not sure if that kind of mindset hits you, especially in sales, right? You're always like, wow, I really want to, be the best person. I want to close deals. I want to run at least $1 million US kind of deals. So so I felt like that has, changed. And then now being today, it's like, yeah, we hustled and we've seen some progression, but it's important to find something meaningful at work. And that's why the concept of work-life fulfillment comes to play, right? Because we spend so much time building our careers, and it's not done and it will never be done. Arguably, we're like in our prime time, right? Like early 30s and all. So that concept just hit me. What do I want to achieve in life? And can the work that I do today drive that towards, And it's a big topic. I haven't found the answer, but I'm working through it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because coming from sales or similar, I understand exactly what you're talking about. It's more like you're trying to find the balance between that work fulfillment, as what you mentioned, but also achieving that growth at the same time. And it's very hard to find that fine line where you can achieve both. So a question for you really is, at what point within your career growth did you recognize that, I guess, that work-life balance wasn't for you, or that wasn't suitable for you? Do you think it was like the early stages of your career that you realized that wasn't it for you, or?
Honestly, I'm very adaptive to my environment. So, Sam, being in sales, right? There was no time, there was no growth. So I was sort of like pushed into the ocean and then learn how to swim.
Yeah.
Meet your quotas or you're out, or you look bad, or you get, But it was, So I think from the beginning, just so happened, the concept of work-life balance, yes, I may have shared like, oh yeah, but the role nature itself has already made it clear that work hard and you get outsized returns.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you resonate with that, but that's sort of like how when I joined in. So my first job was like a tech sales role in a software company. Yeah, not very big, fairly big now, right? They are in online media intelligence space, but basically everyone that you reach out to back then, like almost 10 years ago, right? There's like, who the heck are you guys, right? So you have to go through that thing. You like cold call your way in, and yeah. So it was a interesting environment to be in. But I really like it because culture, like why I joined that company was the great culture. Yeah. So hope that answers your question. Like it was very early in my career or like fresh out of college, right? And then I was sort of thrown in the thing like, oh, you have to put in the yeah, because everyone around you was like, wow, they're so good, right? Like how can they do it?
Yeah.
Right? Cold call and then get people talking for 5, yeah, and then sometimes on the same day close deals. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
And I can just imagine in Hong Kong the expectations are a lot higher as well, like the turnarounds and like the KPIs and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's quite similar for me as well. Like when you were just first talking about how work-life balance is different through the different stages of your life as well, was it similar for me? Like when you're fresh out of whatever you studied, you're passionate about being the best, or at least be really good at your job. So you're willing to put the time in and put the extra hours, and that is still okay for you. And plus you're in your 20s, you've got all the energy that you need, so you're just constantly pushing. And recently as well, like within the last 6 months to a year, I did find myself thinking about like why it's not necessarily that I don't want to push or put more energy into work, but you do understand that there are times that you need to give yourself, so that you shouldn't be so willingly be like, okay, I'll work an extra like 2 to 3 hours to get this stuff over the line. Like if it's not detrimental for the next day, maybe we can wait till tomorrow. And back then, if I was like first studying like the first few years of work, I'd be like, no, like I'll put in the extra work and just get it done. So I did find that shift in my mindset in terms of work and work-life balance.
Maybe a follow-up question on that, right? Like how did you approach that shift, or how did you know that, work was not like, what's that self-realization moment, right? When like, yes, because arguably 30s still have a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Confirm, not, and a lot more wisdom, right? But how come, we decided to do so many other things, right? Yeah. How did you approach, like get to that realization?
For me, it was a physical burnout. Like I did actually burn out to the point where I could not peel myself off the couch. And I don't think at the time it was a correlation where I physically noticed that it was from burnout that I didn't want to push the hours anymore, but it was just something my body naturally was like, no, like why am I putting an extra 2 to 3 hours when this, like one, it's like not something that needs to be done the next day. It is important, but your health and your mindset and your own well-being is also just as important. So I think naturally my body was just like, let's just not put in the extra hours if you don't need to, and just actually rest.
Yeah, work-life balance is actually an interesting conversation because, like you said, Ray, there's that fine line between like the middle of working hard, playing hard, but also realizing, oh, okay, what is best suited for yourself. And like even for me, like I've gone through, you could say, burnout to some extent where it was more health condition. Like I noticed that I was getting sick more. I was working pretty much 7 days, 12 hours, and it just got so much where, health was significantly affected. And to me, that was where I had to say, no, that this job or this role that I was in is not for me. And that's where I had to call basically, or pull the pin to say, look, that's enough, that I have to move on.
Yeah. And the culture that you speak about, that's so important. After going through different companies, you realize, you could be getting more money, more pay, but if your culture and the people aren't there to support you, no matter how much money you're getting, you're still going to be unhappy. And you work 8 to 10 hours with these people. And like you said, like work is more than, like you spend more time at work than maybe even your friends or your family sometimes. So it's important to have that work culture and the people that you can actually talk to and resonate to and can lean on when you actually need them for support. A quick interruption. We want to thank all of you who have been supporting us. And if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe on our YouTube.
If you found any of our episodes helpful, please share to your friends and family, as it would help us grow.
Now back to the episode.
I think sort of both Amelia and also Sam, you've shared different trigger points, right? To make you think. I think more, and I think both of you come from more the health trigger, right? But I also wanted to raise, like, I think for me, it was not really health. It was more on the mental aspect.
Mm.
Like I was just lost. And I use this word lost because I literally don't know how to think about, I mean, how else to think about that? Like I didn't know what I wanted, basically. I mean, my health was always in check because I built a system that no matter how tough, like fitness, and I'm sure you guys have these systems in place, right? Is a non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter how hard certain things are, yeah, we can reduce the frequency, right, to meet certain deadlines or meet a certain prospect that it's so hard to get a happy hour. And then I was like, okay, yeah, I'll meet, right? Yeah. So for me, I think I come from a perspective. Yeah, I think health was fairly okay. Yeah, it's like a non-negotiable. But I think from a mental perspective, like mental health, right? Like I just 1 year ago, right? I think I could say it's burnout, but I actually don't know what it is. And I went through therapy to actually understand that, right? It's more like just a confidence hit. And I still haven't figured out what. But the main root cause that I tie to it, and I've sort of got out of it, is like, I think it's something related to work. I just don't know what about my life. Like everything just seemed very plain in life. Yeah, I was like meeting people. I love meeting people, but when I meet them, I was like, I don't want to talk to them. Or I just don't feel comfortable talking about like things, right? And these are good friends and all, right? And then I just kind of became more introvert to myself. I was always talking to my wife through all that, yeah, but I couldn't really find an answer. But then slowly I peel off, is what at work? And I realized like the whole concept of uncertainty, right? I was like not like going through very tough deals, numbers that time. We got through it. Everyone was happy, but that experience made me feel and question myself like, am I good enough? I felt, right? So it's just me coming to sense like, oh, actually, if we break things down to really work to it, there will be uncertainties in life, right? So me having that mindset that, oh, you are good enough, you are okay to go through that. So for me, I think, yeah, just wanted to share this perspective.
That's good. Yeah.
Sometimes in your mind, it's in your mind. Yeah. And it's sometimes your work can just overwhelm you without you noticing it until one day, everything you feel that you are so clear about just becomes unclear. So that really shook me for a good 3 to 6 months. And I was like, I'm so glad I'm out of it with some clarity and reflection and learning. Still have no idea how that triggered, but I'm more aware on that, and hopefully that doesn't relapse.
No, it's good that you shared that because that was quite similar to my case when I was talking about the whole burnout thing. Like, apart from physically burning out and can't peel myself off the couch, it was the same thing. It's like, what am I doing? Like, what am I working for? Am I even reaching for my goals? Am I doing enough to be able to reach better than what I'm like to achieve what I wanted to achieve? And those are the questions that I was asking. And yeah, just feeling not good enough and just feeling like literally like a paper bag just floating in the wind. You're like, where am I going? And that was what I felt as well.
Yeah.
And then during our call, you did mention also noticing like the Maslow's hierarchy, and the top part is your sense of purpose. So I wanted to just get you to elaborate on that and what you meant by that in terms of the work-life balance and work-life fulfillment.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm not very clear on what I want. So I think why there's different principles or laws, right? So this Maslow hierarchy of needs, I think for the listeners that have not heard of it, or for those that heard of it, it's a good refresher, right? Essentially, like like if we look at human beings, right, we have different needs, right? And it's a hierarchy, right? As you have to first fulfill the bottom needs before you can progress to the higher ones, right? So at the bottom is really just stuff that requires you to live as a human being. Food, shelter.
Basic needs.
Yeah, basic needs, right? House, a home, money, right? And then as you work up, it's like, finding a good job, good culture, right? A good manager, like in the context of work, right? But at the top, there's something called purpose, or something that drives self-fulfillment. So that really hit me, and I really resonate with that because I think people that are all in the podcast listening, right? We all blessed. Sitting somewhere, commuting somewhere, we have AirPods or like devices. So we already fulfilled the basic needs, right? It's just that, and this makes me, I think, passionate, right? To how to actually help people in the middle needs to really achieve their purpose in life. I haven't achieved that, right? So, but I tie the way I live my life to, help other people fulfill that a lot, right? So that's sort of a long way to answer the question, right? But you get the point, right? From the bottom, basic needs, and then slowly work your way up as you're more comfortable to think about things that you wanted to achieve or make a difference or leave a legacy in this world.
Do you think each individual's sense of purpose can change?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Because there's two types of people, right? But even the second type of people, I feel like, yeah, our sense of purpose will adapt and change gradually across different phases in life. Some people, I think if you're lucky, your sense of purpose is quite consistent through your phases in life. That's good, right? As long as you continuously feel passionate about that and your energy working towards that sense of purpose, I think that's really great, right? Some people are born with that, and I'm not sure. It's interesting, right? But I feel like maybe only a good 10 to 20%, right? The rest of us, like me at least, fall in that category. It's like we're born when we sort of don't really know what we want to do, right? But we know what we're good at, what we don't like and stuff. And we have to figure out a way to hit towards that life goal, life purpose, or what brings you fulfillment. I'm still figuring out, yeah, but at least at the high level direction, or like I want to help people. How I help people, I'm not sure. And yeah, guiding principles, I want to live a good life, right? And there's so many different things that you can do to live a good life.
I guess we're the same. I'm also the same thing. Like, I don't know what my purpose is, and I don't think I'll ever find an actual definite answer, but it's the same thing. I enjoy helping people, guiding people. Like, it's not definitely giving them an answer, being like, you need to do this, but as long as it gives them that little 1% more confidence in themselves to do whatever they want to do, I'm happy with that, and that truly makes me happy.
Yeah.
Exactly the same, hey. It's just hard. It's as life it progresses, your purpose changes. You got to adapt to it. You got to change things. You got to work with the flow of it.
Yeah.
But speaking of purpose and work life and all that, well, you did mention that we all need to start thinking about how not to waste your life. I want to see how you put that into practice for yourself.
It's a big question, and I don't think I have a clear, defined answer.
That's fine.
Right? So I think at this stage in my life, how not to waste my life, right? So obviously, indirectly, there is bucket lists in my mind, right? Things that I need to do, but it's not by a certain age and stuff, like, right? Things, for example, like be a people manager, like career, like, and there's different buckets for different things, right? Like career, it's like, oh, I want to be a people manager one day, sales leader, cover a region, right? It may seem so far away now, but it's sort of in that list. Like, okay, if my career was good, I had a fulfilling one, right? And then I bunch out different things like, oh, help customers promote into C-level roles, this kind. I think that's also something that I get fulfilled because you help them enough, and then you're part of their growth, right? So I look at it into different buckets. And then fitness, obviously, now, like fitness is the easy one, right? Because yes, it's lifelong, but you always need to find something to keep your training meaningful, right? So, and for me, fitness has evolved over time, right? Growing up, I did martial arts because my dad really liked that.
That's
so I was
cool.
more like, okay, I have to do it. And I ended up like not liking it so much, but I did it anyway, right? But then I felt like, okay, do badminton during high school. Yeah. So I'm not very good, but somehow like I became, my school badminton captain, right?
Nice.
Not very good, but I was captain.
Yeah. And then in Hong Kong, I tried Dragon Boat, right? And then that has became my university identity. Still do it, but it's been like more than 1.5 years since I paddled. But and then now it's like, okay, just going to the gym, and now with running has become quite a big part of my training because I just felt like it's a great there's a great community. I didn't know, like I'm quite a community centric kind of person, like culture, like work and everything, right? And then I realized, wow, there's good community.
That's cool,
right? And it started by me saying like, I want to do a full marathon just because it's like a bucket list thing. I want to do it once in my life. And that has transcended on, different ways of training, and I feel happy progressing through that, right? And then in between, there's High Rocks, right? That's now like a global hit for CrossFit. 8 laps of 1 km run, and in between the runs, you do an exercise. So I just did mine in Singapore, right? And I was like, first time doing singles, and then I was like, yeah, got my sub 2 hour time, man.
That's
I finished. And then now I'm like
awesome.
thinking, oh, should I do the one in Hong Kong? Do one sub 1:30, right? So sometimes setting those goals will make you can't just set goals for that, right? Because that's setting up yourself for failure. But I set goals that I feel like I want to invest time to work on it. So I know like now I have to improve my runs and probably get stronger on some exercises and all, right? And then so that's like the fitness aspect, right? Then there's so many other things outside of career and work. Like that's why I used to do the podcast, because I really want to explore the world outside professional life and understanding how and why some people are very successful, to also let other young adults know, like similar to what you guys are doing, right? And that's why I run my fitness account, Malaizai, right? It's on Instagram. Yeah, so there's so many different things that I'm doing, bucketing, that I feel like if I do these stuff well, I will be a happy man, right? Like if my wife feels proud and I still give her enough time and we grow together, I also, yeah. So that's like balancing between your personal goals and aligning it with your life partner. I think we also can deep dive about that, since you guys are living example, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely relationship and like doing that as well is a whole another aspect to it. But just to answer that question on how not to waste your life. So in your perspective, it's more just finding things that you're interested in, like your bucket list, your to-do list, and just reach for those, and you like, either work on them, try and discover them, and that's how you would find a more fulfilling life.
Yeah. Because I'm more like a doer. I like to achieve things, right? Yeah, I guess very Asian mindset, right? Like, but I felt like, yeah, by doing things and I've done certain events, it just makes me feel like, okay, at the very least, I tried. If I didn't try, what did I learn from it? How can I do better? Or maybe I end up not liking that thing. Then I know, like, oh, that's something that, yeah, maybe I shouldn't spend so much time on, right?
No, I
Yeah.
love that.
You know, that's actually interesting, because when you talk about all those things, it's really just asking yourself, like, how are you mindful with your priorities? And it seems like you are very focused on those non-primary goals. But in terms of the mindfulness, how are you, like, what's your energy like when it comes to focusing on those priorities?
Yeah, great question. Energy is limited, man. Like, especially like after I hit past 30, right? Now I'm approaching 31, I just realized like you only have so much energy
Yeah.
in a day. Doesn't matter. Like you can get up early. That's good. Like the 5 a.m. CEO club, right? But that means you're out. You're out at 9, 10. You're tired, right?
Yeah.
Even though you're extrovert, right? Like you meet people, you get energy. But meeting people is like just being there, present, right? But there's so many things outside of that that you need to follow up. For example, like you meet new customers, prospects. You need to have that discipline to follow up after that, right? Because energy is scarce now, right? We only have so much energy in life, right? And I break it down daily. I know like, okay, how much, like what are the key tasks I need to do, right? And so that's more like a daily task level. But if you look at your life, and life is such a big word, right? But if you look at your current 3 months, 6 months, year, you kind of know how much energy you need to spend in each of the goals or areas. Like career, it's a big one. It takes up more than 50%. Like I think with experience, you probably get more, but if you rise up the ladder, your responsibility just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So I don't see a way that career will be a small part of it. And that's why I felt like, yeah, the concept of work-life fulfillment is so important. You need to find work that is meaningful, that you feel passionate about working every day. Because if you don't do that, like I just feel like your whole life and how to live a life thing would just crumble. You're probably in the wrong, or maybe your mindset of living life is different, because there's no one way to live a life, right? Like some people just want to live life as it is. They don't want to think too much, or they're not exposed to the idea that, oh, they need to leave a purpose. They need to to leave a legacy and all, right? So I felt like, yeah, there's no one way to live a life, but maybe to go back into that, how I prioritize, it's based on the concept of how much energy I have and what's important to me in this phase in life. And I think now, like when we look at phase in life, it's like 1 year is already quite long, right? Yeah, 3 months, 6 months. Actually, we can do so many things.
Yeah.
Like you can meet so many people. It's crazy. But who are the people that are important for you to be connected with now at this point in your life? I think that's how I prioritize. Which customers I need to really grow or bet my career on or bet my quota on, right? I think I also look at it that way from a work perspective, that the rule of 80-20, right? And then social life, what ties out, like, so I think now it's more on the fitness. So people that, the communities that I go, right? So I align it with my wife because that's a non-negotiable. She also needs time, right? Like we need to spend time together, grow a family and all, right? So that's how I sort of approached it. Yeah. Based on how much energy you have and what are the goals that you prioritize on, I focus on those. And then everything else is nice to have. Really, like meeting like a pretty KOL, oh, they're like, oh, nice, you're thinking. But sometimes I feel like, man, I don't even have time to update my Malaizai or create interesting reels, right? Is now the right time to meet someone to do a collab? Maybe not.
Now, that's interesting how you talk about your relationship, how career is exactly right. You're focused on your career, but it takes up a lot of your time and your energy. But then you also have to be conscious about scheduling those times with your partner as well. For you, how do you actually balance it? Because for me, I kind of struggle at times because I get overwhelmed with work and I focus on that. But then sometimes I forget about balance with the relationship.
Yeah, especially because we also have this podcast. So technically it's sort of like time together, but it's not actually relationship time. So how do you balance it?
Yeah. So this one I think my wife is really good at, right? And I just, it's all about alignment, right? Obviously, before alignment, you need to communicate, right? Or else Sam wouldn't know, like, let's say, Amelia, how you're feeling, right? So obviously, you guys have a good communication, right? If not, you won't even know, like, there's this misalignment, right? And then after that, it's aligning and making sure there is, I would say, structures in place. For example, and what I mean by that is like, and I can use my example, right? Now, when I meet people, right, especially when it's non-work stuff, right, I have to sort of get an approval from wife,
from the boss,
which I think is fair. Yeah, right. Especially if it's like someone I like. Guys, it's not like, I think this is more in the context of females, right? Yeah. So but these kind of points, right? Like, and the approvals need to be sometimes it varies based on different things, right? 1 week in advance or 24 hours in advance, right? Work stuff, I think, as long as we align on why it's important and like, but to be honest, like you can't just say work, right? Because so many things is work. What about work? So she starts asking questions like, why do you need to fly this time, that time? So like so it's good practice for myself and maybe for someone like you, Sam, right? Like to understand what meetings are really important. Too many customers, right? Like, but is that meeting something that is really important, or is this business trip really required? Because everyone, I feel like, oh, if they have time, they want to go on business trip. But I'm like, oh no, my priority is to be in Hong Kong. My customers are here. Only certain trips then I think I run it through and I have to sell myself and think like, oh, this is meaningful use of my time away from my family. So I start having that, and then I realize like half or 60, like, at least half of the meetings become like, okay, it's just process. There's no real thing, and sometimes it can be prioritized accordingly. I felt that was quite at least helpful for me, right? But sometimes like basic structures, like like I used to schedule like every day meet customers, like dinners and all. Then I realized like I just come back tired, dead. And then that happened for like 2-3 weeks, 1 month. And then like something is off, man.
And your partner can feel that too, right? Like
exactly.
Your wife.
Exactly.
Aside from saying no to the non-important meetings, are there any other non-negotiables for the relationship that you have put in place?
I wouldn't say it's non-negotiable, but we sort of have a unwritten rule, like, okay, Sunday in the afternoon, like today, like we'll clean up the house, we'll get a maid, we'll buy groceries and all, right? So Sunday is like sort of stay at home day in the afternoon, especially, right? And then we eat dinner at home and all. And on the weekday, at least one night, we eat out or like have a proper dinner together.
Nice.
That kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, simple, but it works. From that, because I think all of us can kind of agree, we do a lot in working, and even for you, it sounds like you work a lot of hours, even further than the 9 to 5. So some people might see that as workaholic, but you call that work-life fulfillment as long as it's in something that you enjoy and you've got a good work-life culture. I just wanted to throw it to all of us again, like what's the difference and how do we differentiate between workaholic and work-life fulfillment or a balanced work-life?
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective, honestly. It's hard to detach both because if you're someone that's similar, working towards the same thing, right? You won't see it, you won't label that thing as workaholic. You'd be like, wow, that person is driven, right? So I think it's more like which angle or persona is actually thinking about that term.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, just work-life fulfillment and workaholic, I think I can't say that they're synonyms, but it's like how you approach and think about that person and the mindset that you have. It's really causing why they're labeling it workaholic. But I guess like, yeah, if we want to just say workaholic, it's like, yeah, maybe they just work all the time. Like maybe they don't even have like a decent personal life and all, right? They're just working without any purpose and all. But I think like work-life fulfillment, that's something that you truly enjoy your work, and you've also like built a life around your work, your family, your friends, the community, right? Let's say this podcast, right? If it goes viral, takes off, right? You build brand deals around that, you build causes. That's work-life fulfillment, right? Yeah, people outside that always think like, oh, you guys are always working, and then they'll be like, oh, you guys are workaholics.
Yeah.
No, that's really true, and I sort of see that as well because, yeah, like so many people who probably are very into that 9 to 5 and that's their work-life balance, and then anyone who does more than that, they're like, it's because they're already in that mindset that it has to be a 9 to 5. If not, that's workaholic. So it really depends on who sees it as well.
Very true.
And another perspective is I can see workaholic is they may not be happy in their job. They might just want to have money and earn more money. So just constantly getting any job that they can or work extra hours and then just doing it purely for the money, but they may or may not be happy.
Yeah, all very valid points. I think it all comes down to the person's situation. But from how I see it, it's very much a workaholic to me is more of someone who is exactly what you guys have said. Very much someone that works all the time, doesn't see a life outside of work, ignoring those external factors. But then people who are working towards work fulfillment is more like you said, Ray, working towards that goal, that maybe growth and within, your career growth or whatever it is, you're surrounding yourself around that fulfillment for you to work hard, but there's a purpose behind it. As long as there's a purpose, then I feel like that's where that work fulfillment is defined as.
Yeah, and work can be fun. It doesn't have to be like tedious or like drains your energy. Like if you do something you enjoy, it can be fun.
Yep, I agree.
3 points to work-life fulfillment. But let's end it with 3 advice for any listeners or like your friends or anyone who would come to you on unique tips on finding work-life fulfillment.
Okay. I guess maybe not specific to work-life fulfillment. Let's keep it broader. Then I think, because the concept of work-life fulfillment is sort of like you need to find your why and your purpose first, right? So maybe I'll answer those 3 tips based on that, right? So maybe the first one, it's like you just have to be more opportunistic. Meaning, like, you need to really say yes to like, especially if you are not clear on what you want, right? You have to really go outside your comfort zone to try different things. But if you already have a direction of what you want, then you just try certain things in that area, right? And get used to being uncomfortable, right? Because then you would start knowing, okay, what you actually want, right? And this, for example, like, is we actually are biased to extroverts if you think about that. So let's say you're introvert, you have like what, and why I say like get used to being uncomfortable, because even as extroverts, when you go up to people to talk, there's still that feeling of uncomfort or
Mm-hmm.
awkwardness.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm an awkward person, right? But you just get used to being uncomfortable, and that's really necessary to really get the most out of the conversation sometimes. And all you have to, and it comes with practice. It doesn't mean like you talk to someone and then everything is perfect, right? Like when you're young, right? I know Sam, like when you chased for girls last time, I like the heart beating, and then you thought like saying hi and everything will be like perfect. And like you just say hi and then the other person says hi, and then I tend to just walk away because I thought like, oh, everything is done.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the heck? That's not right. Yeah. So just overall, just be more opportunistic. Put yourself out there more. I think that would really help. And number two is like riding on the first one, right? Like really be intentional on putting yourself in the same room with not just like-minded people, but people that have been more successful, right? So LinkedIn is a good way to reach out to people that, you know, within your industries, they have done well, right? Sometimes you just have to, because what and why I say this is, and it's not, and it's intentional in a good way, right? Because we don't want to just get things out of them, right? But we really want to make sure we get exposed to people that have lived their life a certain way in a happy way, right? And then by interacting with those people, you kind of know, and you sort of like get a cheat sheet on whether, oh, that's the kind of life I want, or that's the kind of life that I don't want, or there's something in their life that you felt like you can incorporate in yours, right?
Yeah.
And then build systems around that to achieve to that. Yeah. So sometimes I felt like, yeah, if you're the kind of person that don't really know how to have breakthroughs and all, like just talking to people that have done it. Or like if you want to explore in a different career path, like just get someone, just be authentic and be mindful of how you reach out. But I think getting exposed to people that are not within the same trajectory is helpful. So maybe just these two tips given the time, I guess.
I really love that one, and that second one that you shared was something that I always held myself back on, like say 6 months ago. I'd be like, because Sam's always like, just reach out to people on LinkedIn, or like I just chat to them. Like, how do you do that? I'm like, that's just weird. Like, how do you just be like, hey, I just saw your LinkedIn, kind of like, and like now, like 6 months later, I do exactly the same thing, and it's been the best thing to just push yourself to do that. And not just for like work or anything, but you can learn from their experiences, learn from their perspective, and then add more knowledge to your bank. I love that one.
Yeah, the surrounding yourself with people who have done it before, that's really powerful, because then you can, exactly what you said, you resonate with them if you tune in with them, but then you also learn a lot from them as well.
No, I loved all the stuff that you shared with us, and just your perspective on work-life fulfillment, because that really does resonate with me personally, because I do a lot of things that's outside of 9 to 5, and trying to find that and being happy with that and finding a purpose, which may or may not change. Even maybe in the next 6 months, I might have a different purpose, but I agree with all the things that you shared. I really loved it.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Ray. Really appreciate the time that you put in to, obviously, with the time differences, especially in Hong Kong. So really appreciate your time.
Yeah, and before we go, did you want to share some links or where people can find you, or even like watch your fitness?
Or even marathon runs if someone wants to reach out to you.
Yeah. On my socials, just Malaizai _fitness, MALAIZAI _fitness. Yeah. So just find me there for, I guess, a very different version of what we're talking about, but it's more on like fitness, mindset, food kind of content.
Love it.
Nice.
Yeah, cool. We'll put the name above as well so that people can find it. But apart from that, we really enjoyed our conversation, and we're hoping everyone that's tuning in and listening finds their work-life fulfillment and life fulfillment in general. And that's it for this week.
Yeah, that's it. Once again, thanks guys for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for having me.
Goodbye.
Peace.